Thomas Nagel, in his book A View from Nowhere, I think really nailed the coffin shut on objectivity, or at least as far as human objectivity. And basically, in this book, he says, when we look at something, say we have like our objective self here, okay, and we're looking out here, and we're looking at these objects over here. And as you look at these objects, you take in the data and you bring it into yourself, but then you have to step back from yourself. Okay, you have to step back, and then you have to look at yourself looking at these objects, and you have to think, what kind of epistemological state was I in when I was observing that tree, or talking to that person, or reading this holy book, or having that vision from God? Was I tired? Was I sick? Was I fatigued? And then you have to step back from your subjective self 2, looking at your subjective self 1, and you have to say, what kind of state was I in there, looking at myself. And the point is, there is no epistemological place you can go, or place of knowledge where you can go as a human being, where you can be separate from yourself, because wherever you go, there you are, and your subjective self will be with you. So you could be given the greatest absolute objective truth or data or facts in the universe, but as soon as it's whispered in your ear, it becomes subjective to you. Now, I can only think of one exception to this, and this isn't Thomas Nagel, and this isn't necessarily Soren Kierkegaard, but as I was pondering this idea of objective and subjective truth, I began to think, in order to have truly objective truth, you would have to know every perspective simultaneously. You couldn't just have a singular perspective or multiple perspectives, but you would have to have all perspectives. And there's only one being in the universe that I know of that can see things from both the inside and the out simultaneously. And that, of course, would be the person of God. And you might say, no, he's just a bigger subjective self or ego. Well, it's more than that. God not only knows everything that's going on in the world because he's omnipresent or omniscient, that he can see everything happening simultaneously, past, present, and future. And it's not just because he was incarnate in the person of Jesus Christ that he knows what it's like to be a human, but God knows what it's like to be every single human. Not just the human Jesus, but the human Fred, the human Betty, Bob, Sue. He knows what it was like when you got your heart broke for the first time. He knows it subjectively, experientially, existentially, because he was there with you in that perspective. God knows what it's like when you scored that winning soccer goal for your team. He felt the joy that you felt. He felt the emotions. He felt the adulation of the crowds. He also felt the agony of defeat when you cost your team the championship, or when you hit that little kid on the bicycle and broke his leg, and the remorse and guilt and shame you felt for those actions. He understands all these things subjectively. And not just all the totality of human subjective experience, but he also knows what it's like for every deer that's feeding by grass by a cool stream. He knows the terror of the night for different animals. He knows what it's like for a blade of grass to grow in the desert, or a flower to bloom, or some sea creature in the deepest parts of the oceans. And when you take all of those subjective experiences together, God has them all continuously and simultaneously. And so in that instance, I think you could say God has an objective or absolute point of view. And if you're in the Spirit, and God's telling you something or revealing something to you, I guess to the degree that God reveals it to you, you could know truth. But when we talk about truth, existential truth is very different than an Aristotelian type of truth. And I like a lot of things about Aristotle, But Aristotle has really messed up Western civilization for a long time, and I think it's time we break the bands of that sort of thing. Between him and Thomas Aquinas and their use of reason, and we all know that reason is nothing more than Aristotle's little whore. And I'm going to try to help you break free of reason after this video, and it's going to set you free. Hopefully you'll be set free. And the truth will set you free. And what is truth? Well, for Aristotle, truth was, he had two different types of truth. One was the correspondence theory of truth, where if I said something like, I'm holding a mug in my hand. Now, that statement either corresponds to reality or it doesn't correspond to reality. So if I say, I'm holding a mug in my hand, that would be a true statement. And if I said it again, said, I'm holding my mug in my hand, and I'm not, then it would be an untrue statement. He also had this idea of non-contradiction. And non-contradiction is this idea that A equals A and non-A does not equal A. In other words, something is either black or it's white. It's right or it's wrong. It's high or it's low. It's to the left or to the right. It's long or it's short. And these are really nice types of truth if you're trying to find out who broke the window, or who left the skateboard at the bottom of the stairs, or who punched your little sister. I mean, those are, you want sort of black and white, this or that sort of answers. But life and reality, it's not quite that simple. And there's another type of truth. And this type of truth the Greeks called aletheia. And aletheia means to be revealed, or unveiled, or uncovered. It's almost like if you put a blanket over everything that could be known. Well, the covering, that's like a lie. The uncovering or the unveiling, that is the truth. And I really like this picture of truth. But if you use this definition of truth, there's only one being in the universe that knows truth, and that would be God, because God is the only one who sees everything unveiled. The rest of us see things to a greater or lesser degree of veiledness, but it's still veiled. We don't see the whole picture. It's kind of like the Sufi story of the five blind men and the elephant, where the 5 blind men all went out of their village and they'd never experienced the elephant before. And one of them touched the tail and they said, oh, an elephant's like a rope or like a switch. And another one touched its leg and he says, what are you talking about? It's like a tree. It's like a tree trunk. And the other one touched its body and said, it's like a house. It's huge. And the other one touched its earring and said, what do you mean? It's like a fan. And the other one felt its trunk and they said, it's like a powerful snake. Well, they were all right, but they were all wrong, because they only saw a small piece or a part of the whole picture. And that's how it often is for us as humans. If you look in the New Testament, especially in the writings of John, and you see which Greek word is being used for truth, I think you'll find it's quite significant. When Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no man cometh to the Father but by me, well, guess what word's being used? It's aletheia. Jesus is God revealed, God unveiled to man. And so I think that's a great thing to think about. So truth is subjectivity. We can strive to be more or less objective as long as you realize and you're honest with yourself that no one is truly without bias or prejudice. We all have preconceived ideas. We all have presuppositions. We all have a starting point or a perspectival angle at which we're seeing the world.